If I'm being honest, this isn't really a Classic Plus server, it's more of a Retail Classic hybrid. Imagine if Blizzard launched a vanilla remix on Retail WoW tomorrow. That's what this feels like. And honestly, that's not entirely a bad thing. On October 3rd, yet another Classic Plus server launched, Warcraft Reborn. This server puts a massive emphasis on improving class design, adding a splash of originality, and completely revamping the open world to make it more engaging and immersive. You'll encounter brand new custom content and see things you've never seen before in Classic WoW. I've actually been playing Warcraft Reborn quite extensively, and honestly there are a few things I absolutely love about it, but also some major fundamental problems that I think will turn off many Classic WoW players, so let's talk about it all in this video. By the way guys, I'm working on revamping all of my old written Burning Crusade guides with the launch of fresh TBC Anniversary, like all the best quests to get for the launch, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and follow me on Instagram to gain access to those guides that are going to be coming very soon. So first of all, this server is incredibly popular. I was stuck in a queue of over 3,000 people for an hour, and at one point it peaked at over 8,000. The starting zone was absolutely swarming with players. It felt alive. You don't have to worry about the server having a bad population. It's actually going bonkers. I think they just launched a new server because the current server couldn't actually take the capacity of players that wanted to play the server. But one cool unique feature with this server is how quest mob kill credit is shared with anybody nearby, even if you're not grouped, as long as you deal enough damage to that mob. That means no more waiting forever for mobs to respawn just to complete quests. However, loot isn't shared, so there are still some bottleneck moments where you have to group up with people. I decided to start my journey as an undead paladin, one of the new race to class combos available on this server. I enjoyed it so much, when I played it on Epoch WoW, that I figured out I'll do it again here, especially since Project Ascension expands class design even further. One thing I didn't like about Epoch, to be honest, was the starting area 1 to 5, it didn't really do anything new apart from one extra quest. Warcraft Reborn, on the other hand, has immediately impressed everyone. The Undead Starter Zone, for example, and I'm pretty sure every single race from other videos and streams that I've seen have done the same, it included an entirely new area to explore before you even head to the first town, which obviously is Brill for the Undead. There's this eerie haunted mansion and a crypt on the top of the hill, complete with several new quests. Some are standard slay and collect quests, but the highlight is a group quest that ends with a mini-boss encounter, only accessible via a secret trapdoor once you've completed all the quests in the area, because it requires a special key. It's a clever little twist that gives the starting area a memorable conclusion. It reminded me a lot of how well designed the Worgen starting area was. By the way guys, if you are playing any version of Classic WoW or Retail right now, by far the fastest step-by-step leveling guide, literally designed by the world record holding speed levelers in the game, is Rested XP. It also has so many useful features like a safer version for hardcore, profession power leveling and gold making, along with a lot of class specific tips. You'll also find an optimal quest preparation route for the launch of TBC Classic and Mr. Pandaria on there that you can start working on right now, so check out the description of the video for more information on that add-on. And then it was onwards to Brill, which immediately caught me by surprise. Every race's first town has been completely revamped with new buildings and immersive details that make each location look and feel unique. It generally felt like I picked up twice as many quests as before, like you'd originally do in vanilla, maybe even too many to be honest, especially for a new player. It was a bit overwhelming. What I did is I just focused on doing the quests that I know and then left the new quests until later. Personally, I think it would have been better if they focused on expanding the current existing quest chains rather than flooding the player with too many new quests all at once. One new quest involved going to this tower covered in strange spores that you need to collect, but for some reason the quest design requires you to click the spore and then pull it, which was cool and it was unique and totally flawed unfortunately, because if another player interacted with it while you were pulling it, it would break the kind of strand that you see coming from your character and then you get absolutely no quest credit. So people were spending ages trying to coordinate their clicks only for a random player to come along and mess it up. It was an absolute cesspit for many days when the server launched. Another issue I noticed early was how you can get a mount at level 6. It only provides a 40% speed boost, but still, it just doesn't feel right. Classic WoW has always been about progression and earning meaningful rewards, like your mount. Getting a mount at level 20 or 30 feels like an achievement. Getting one at level 6 just feels cheap. Another thing that's going to hit a lot of classic WoW players right away is the transmog system. People can actually transmog their mounts into ones they've unlocked on other servers, which means you'll see players running around on full-on retail mounts like the Mr. Pandaria dragon models or even the Spectral Tiger. Honestly, it looked uncomfortably cringe. I can't really think of a better word. And it didn't stop there. You know, some players in Battlegrounds are running around in full Judgment gear with Ash Candy at level 15. Fortunately, after my inner Classic WoW purist complained loudly enough, the chat kindly informed me on how to turn that disgusting nonsense off. And once I did, the game instantly felt 1,000 times better, because, guys, even retail isn't that cringe when it comes to transmog. You have to actually gain the equivalent of what would have been level 60 back in the day before you can transmog something like Judgment gear. Running around in Judgment gear at level 15 is just ludicrous. Many players will also be happy to learn you can revert the graphics all the way back to the original vanilla style if you prefer, although personally I don't mind the modernised models for characters, creatures and buildings. They've got it all here, so the game looks really sharp. I was especially impressed with how the server also includes the revamped battlegrounds. I've actually not even seen them before. And even the weather variations of those maps, like the snowy version of Warsong Gulch, which just looked fantastic. There's even a fog of war effect because it's that misty and snowy. While I was working through the early quests, I started noticing some of the more immersive new features this server offers. For example, when I was killing Scarlet Crusade mobs, they actually dropped the armour they were wearing. Part of the server's immersive armour drops feature, which is the thing I like about the server the most, to be honest. Before long, I looked like a full-on Scarlet Crusade novice myself, complete with a themed shield. And at any time you want, right, if you acquire new gear that doesn't look like the gear that looks like the Scarlet Crusade stuff, you could just transmog it, like, instantly in the character menu, rather than going to an NPC in the game, which, I'm not gonna lie, I much prefer that over retail. So I'd collected a cool Scarlet Novice appearance, and I can just keep it on my character for as long as I feel like I want to. They've also added Warlords of Draenor style treasures scattered throughout the world. Glowing items like pitchforks or crossbows that you see on a barrel, you can actually loot them directly from the environment. You literally grab what you see. Those kinds of small immersive touches are honestly my favourite part of Warcraft Reborn. I love when MMOs do this. Even many modern MMOs don't bother with this level of detail. Instead they just dump generic chests everywhere. At level 10 I noticed the group finder becomes available, but only for Battlegrounds. Naturally I had to give it a go, since low level PvP is one of my favourite things to do in WoW. Of course joining a Battleground at level 10 isn't ideal, so I decided to focus on healing to actually make myself useful, and I feel like I did. In Battlegrounds you earn XP for every kill, for objectives, and of course for winning. You still get a decent chunk even if you lose, but participating also gives you a small loot sack containing random gear, similar to the dungeon reward bags from retail. Well, actually, I think they implemented them way long ago in Wrath of the Lich King when they added the dungeon finder. I actually really like this idea because it means you can level up entirely through Battlegrounds without ending up undergeared. The downside, though, is that these loot sacks, they drop actual dungeon gear, okay, from dungeons that you've never even been in, or dungeons you can't even get access to yet because you're too low level. For instance, I somehow got a robe of Aragul, even though I've never stepped foot in Shadowfang Keep, and I got a weaker version of it because gear drops scale to the player. And again, this is a recurring thing with this server. I'm gonna use this word again. It feels cheap because it doesn't really feel like I earned that reward. I didn't make a group for that dungeon. I didn't get the quest for that dungeon. I didn't go and farm that dungeon and kill that boss multiple times to get that piece of gear. Okay, so that piece of gear just, again, it like feels cheap, and I just feel like I cheated. You know what I mean? And you can also queue up for the Twin Peaks at level 10. I personally don't mind it too much. It still fits with the Azeroth vibe. It could be a battleground in vanilla WoW. And it does add some nice variety, so you're not just playing Warsong Gulch all the time. But Temple of Kot Mogul from Mr. Pandaria is also in the rotation, although I think that's much higher level. So yeah, I imagine many classic players aren't going to be a fan of that. At level 15 I decided to give a dungeon finder a try, and if you know me well, you've watched my channel for a while, you probably know how this part of the video is going to go. Yes, I am biased. I have said many times before, I really don't like the dungeon finder. I think it cheapens the whole process of doing a dungeon, that excitement of forming a group through world chat or a pre-made group finder, finding people properly, talking to your guildies, making friends, and finally completing a dungeon together. RDF just doesn't feel as rewarding because it's so fast and instantaneous and cheap. I've said the word cheap again. Another thing they've done on this server is they've shortened the dungeons. So a Nomagon run isn't like how it was in vanilla. There's different sections of Nomagon and different sections of Scarlet Monastery, rather than you being able to just complete the whole thing in a one-er. It's one of the best things about vanilla WoW was how big the dungeons were, how they required sometimes 2 to 3 hours for you to get through them. That was fun. Getting lost in the dungeon. And on this server, what makes it even worse is players can queue up with the opposite faction. So, yeah, I mean, on the plus side, that makes the queues nearly instantaneous. They are lightning fast, especially as you can actually queue for basically every Classic WoW dungeon in a random queue. You can't queue specifically for certain dungeons. You can only queue for basically every Classic WoW dungeon at once. I think it's not every single dungeon at level 15, like you can't do BRD at 15, but you can do stuff like Scarlet Monastery and Nomagon and Shadowfang Keep at level 15, and I don't really like that. And the dungeons themselves and the gear drops scale to the character, so again, it just doesn't feel right. It removes that sense of progression and adventure as you level up your character. Better, cooler dungeons unlock, but on this server it just feels like you get a lot of them all at once. Classic WoW is all about progression. Each dungeon is tied to a specific level range that you gradually unlock as you play. Making them all available immediately and allowing cross-faction grouping breaks immersion completely, and it's frustrating because this server has so many great immersive things that are done right, only to undercut them with features like this. I'm level 21 right now, and honestly, since level 15 I've spent most of my time sitting in Undercity queuing for battlegrounds and dungeons, because it's easy, and it's the path of least resistance. I forced myself to go out and quest in Silverpine Forest for a bit, but because I'd already gotten so much gear from all the dungeons and battleground reward sacks, my character completely outscaled the content. I was literally mowing down groups of 5 Worgen all at once. To be fair, I did like some of the open world PvP features. You can actually become a mercenary and flag yourself as hostile to your own faction. And there's even a more hardcore open world PvP mode where you can loot and lose equipped gear. But honestly, it's not as hardcore as it sounds because, as I've explained, the game just showers you with gear constantly. The developers said they revamped how open world mobs behave to make them more threatening and interesting, so you have to be more tactical with how you approach certain encounters. And sure, there are moments where it feels that way. But between the Wrath-style talent trees and the new Mystic Enchant system, which basically works like glyphs that modify your core abilities, players are just too powerful for vanilla content. And the result is that the open world doesn't pose much of a threat. And I know I'm probably not going to experience now much of a new Classic Plus content because I'll just end up queuing for the random dungeon finder over and over again while chilling in the capital city. If I'm being honest, this isn't really a Classic Plus server, it's more of a Retail Classic hybrid. Imagine if Blizzard launched a vanilla remix on Retail WoW tomorrow. That's what this feels like. And honestly, that's not entirely a bad thing. Yes, I've complained a lot about how this server isn't really my cup of tea. The cash shop and the retail style systems definitely ruin some of the charm, especially when you can summon this Khadgar head to basically give you every single dungeon quest to turn in and accept at the start of a dungeon. Anyway, I would be lying if I said this server isn't fun, because this is a fun server to play. And to be honest, I think it's appealing to a more specific and unique audience that kind of isn't catered to that much. It's basically vanilla WoW with a ton of retail-style theme pack features and modern quality of life improvements. For many players, that's exactly what they want, the nostalgia of the old world without the slow punishing grind that came with it. So if this sounds like your kind of thing, I'd recommend giving it a try. Just look up Project Ascension on Google and you'll find it easily. They've also built their own custom launcher with a fully modded client, so no more fiddling with realm lists or config files. It really is just push and plug and... wait, what is that phrase? Plug and play? Yeah, plug and play. It's plug and play. But anyway guys, remember to subscribe to the channel, Follow me on Instagram, got some really cool content coming there soon, and you'll learn about my career change and a number of other things. Anyway guys, ciao.